The best daily assignment I've ever done, ever, was a strip joint that brought in male strippers to entertain female folks. And I did that in one day. And that's the funniest assignment I've ever done. I started working in Glasgow, my hometown, on the Glasgow Daily Times. I worked there for 4 years. Then I was offered a job at the Courier Journal. And I worked for 42 years at the Courier Journal. I was in Children's Hospital here in Louisville when I was about 12 years old. And when I got out of Children's Hospital, my mother gave me a Brownie Hawkeye camera. And that started all this madness. I had 2 strokes in February of last year. I have photographed 52 Kentucky Derbies. And I was determined to photograph the Derby this year.
He got that one good picture that day. He had his passes, and he didn't have to do the daily assignments where you have to go around. How many hats do you usually have to get?
Oh, it's over
50
with.
photos of hats and everything, and
Can I ask, is this number 52 then? This picture?
Number 52.
52.
That's 52.
Yeah.
That is.
Barack Obama assignment was probably the best assignment I ever had. When Gerald Ford was sworn in, I decided I wanted to do Ford, and we made a presentation to the White House, and we were the first newspaper in the country that was allowed to do that. And I got to do that for 2 days, and that was a real trip. And I was flying high. This picture is very historic, not only because it's 1959, but the negative for this photograph was destroyed during 9/11 World Trade Center. Lowe kept his negatives in a bank, which was in a basement of one of the towers, and those negatives got destroyed during the terrorist attack. And Jack Lowe's daughter was able to find a lot of prints of this picture and others, so she had really good negatives remade of the negatives that were destroyed. But this is a print from an original negative, and this print is very valuable to me. Well, the first Pulitzer we won was it was 1976, and it was a team Pulitzer for our coverage of the school busing here in Louisville. The second Pulitzer was for the Carrollton bus crash, and that was a team Pulitzer. It was in Carrollton, Kentucky, when the Carrollton bus crash happened in 1989. I got called about 1:30 in the morning to go to Carrollton because a bus was in a wreck on I-71 South, and it ended up killing about 28 kids, and it was a huge, huge news story. That was a tougher one to cover, but I was the first photographer there, and all I saw was what looked like garbage bags in the bus, but they weren't garbage bags; they were bodies, and that was tough. Ali was the most generous person I ever photographed. I covered about 5 of his fights. The last time I was with Ali was about 90 or 91. There was a guy by the name of Howard Bingham that was Ali's personal photographer. And Howard and I had been friends a long time. Anyway, so Howard invites me down to Ollie's suite. So we're sitting there, and he was starting to, his Parkinson's disease was starting to kick in more and more during this time. But he always, said, "Hey, Louisville." That's what he called several of us. And he'd want to talk, but he just couldn't talk very well. So anyway, it came time to ride to the theater to cover his going into the theater for the premiere of his movie. So it ended up with Ollie and Howard Bingham and myself going down in the elevator, and it's just us three, and it was kind of cool, And Ollie looks over to me, and he says to Howard Bingham, says, "Howard, this guy here has a mighty punch with the camera. I had a chance to go elsewhere during my time at the Courier, but I love Kentucky. I can't say much more than that." Well, I used to be a jockey before I.
Oh, stop it. That's another joke.